What made you transition after the addiction recovery and being like, might as well be a judge and start deciding the laws on you people?
Well, so look, my last 10 years after college, and I did well in college. I graduated from Berkeley, which is, a pretty top tier school.
Yeah.
But those 10 years after college, when I was using meth again, my term is I worked my way down the corporate ladder. Okay. Like I couldn't hold a job. Right. And because I was using all the time. So when I got sober, I had a Berkeley degree, good grades, and an embarrassing resume. Embarrassing. And so my first career goal when I got home from rehab was let's not get fired again. Like that was my career goal. Okay.
So welcome back, everybody, on the Rumbling Facts podcast. Today I'm your host, DjRetsam, and today we have an incredible and inspiring guest with us. This is the story of triumph over trauma and the journey of the depths of addiction to the highest of success. Today, I'm honored to have Mary Beth O'Connor, a woman that has lived through unimaginable hardships, people, and emerged stronger than ever. She is now the author of From Junkie to Judge, One Woman's Triumph Over Trauma and Addiction, a powerful memoir that details the remarkable transformation of Mary Beth. Now is a retired judge, attorney, advocate, and speaker who has dedicated her life to helping others find their path to recovery now. And Mary Beth's journey is not just overcoming addiction, people. It's about confronting and healing the deep state traumas that starts everything. Because if you don't fix how it starts at people, well, you're always gonna fall back in the bad ways that you started from surviving abuse and kidnapping to becoming a federal judge. Her story is a testament to the strong of a human spirit that we can have. So sit back, people, relax, and get ready for an enlightening conversation that will not only inspire you, but provide you valuable insights into the complexity of addiction recovery and personal growth. Without further ado, let's welcome Mary Beth O'Connor to the Rumbling Facts podcast. How are you doing? We're glad to have you.
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
So before we go into your addictions, what was your upbringing life, and where are you from initially?
So I grew up in central New Jersey, and things were problematic from the start. My mother was unwed in 1961, so this was like a major problem for her. And I was actually left for the first 6 months of my life at a convent. I didn't live with my family. Later, I was also left with a great grandmother for 3 years. But mostly, my mother, she just wasn't really like connected or focused or very interested in being a mother, and so there was not that sort of bond or sense of having parental oversight or somebody on your side. And she was violent at times, but it was really a lot worse when she married my stepfather. And so even from day one, my challenging situation started when I was in the womb, so it was a tough start in a lot of ways.
I don't think parents understand, or they're not in the right mindset that affects the kid to the highest degree. I remember I was playing hockey. There's this one point. I remember when I was 16, 17, I ain't crying for nothing. And we went to do a hockey tournament, and on my way back home with my father, the drive home there, he made me cry. I couldn't believe it. Because everybody in that locker room were like, "Oh, bro, Sam, thank God you were there, because we were fucking not here. Thank God you're there." I scored 3 goals that night, 1 pass, and my dad made me feel like a piece of shit all the way home for that penalty I took, or for that goal I missed, or for that pass I could have had more. And I couldn't believe it. Like, I couldn't even have a boy, or you did good, you could have done better. No, nothing. Couldn't have that. And that's, I think, what most kids need. Just like tell me what I'm doing is right sometimes if I do something right. Because if you don't, that destroyed me. Because after that, everything I did, and let's say somebody would criticize me or say, oh, Sam, if you do it like that, that could be better. Well, I'm triggered right away. I don't take that like a nice move. I take that like, what the fuck? Well, if I'm not doing it right, you do it. So it like triggered like PTSD that people, when they try to tell me criticism or advice, if it's not well formulated, oh, I'm going to feel attacked at all time.
See, that's interesting. I mean, I would do that as well. I could really get verbally aggressive if anybody wasn't complying with what I wanted them to do, or if they were criticizing me in any way. But for me, the PTSD also just showed up as very severe anxiety. And so I never, even when things were going well, I never trusted it. Like I was always waiting for the next horrible thing to happen tomorrow. My husband used to call me the "what about tomorrow" girl. Because it didn't matter how things were going. I always felt, because of my childhood, that one little mistake and the whole thing was going to blow up in my face and I was going to lose everything I had achieved. And so even when I got sober and I was starting to make good choices and moving forward, I couldn't really enjoy it or feel the accomplishment of it like I deserved to, because I was in such a state of high anxiety about what's going to happen tomorrow.
Wow. What were your lowest points in doing drugs? Like the feeling inside of destroying yourself. Did you get that sometimes? Because me doing freebase, there were some nights I was alone, sitting on the ground, like so fucked up I couldn't even move. I was like that, and just waiting for that rush to stop to retake a puff and re-put myself exactly there, and on and on and on, and nightmares. Just staying there, and I wake up a day later and I'm still on the ground like a fucking, tell you, it was so dark because there was no light. Did you have extreme moments like of darkness in your highs?
I mean, so I didn't get sober until I was 32. And, and I started using at 12. I started using meth at 16. I did do a better for a couple of years of college, but, I mean, still way worse than everybody else, but a little better for me. But 32, I mean, that's a long haul.
20 years.
Yes. Something. And so definitely, like in particular, let's just say the last 10 years, I would look in the mirror sometimes and say, like, you're poisoning yourself, like literally you are poisoning yourself. And so it was back and forth. And a lot of times I felt despair. I felt hopeless about finding a way out. But I really believed that because of all my trauma, that I really believed I had three choices that I would, if I stopped using, that I would either commit suicide or I'd end up having some kind of a mental break and I'd end up in a psychiatric hospital forever. Like I really didn't think there was an option to just recover from it all. Like I wasn't aware of that option. I thought, suicides, be committed to an institution or use drugs. Now I was wrong, but that's part of what kept me stuck, is because I didn't believe I could, well, first of all, I didn't believe I could stop the drugs. I've been using them for so long, but even if I did, I didn't believe I could manage my pain. I thought that my pain would overwhelm me, and that I was tamping it down with the drugs. It was only being held at bay because of the drugs. And if I stopped, I would be so overwhelmed that something worse was going to happen.
You push in your book the fact that you need to get rid of that trauma, not only the drug, or else it doesn't help. And I find that is so important. A lot of people don't mention this part because it all starts with trauma initially. You don't just appear in drugs normally. It happens, but most of the time it all starts because you're going through some stuff. Why did you feel it was so important to mention trauma before the addiction part?
Yeah, because so I always knew that my trauma was underneath my drug use. I mean, I was aware of that. And so when I finally went into rehab and was starting to get sober, I knew that I had to address it, because otherwise first of all, part of the way I say it is, it's hard to stay sober if your mental health isn't under control. And it's really hard to get your mental health under control if you're not sober when you have an addiction. Right. And so like I had gone to therapy a couple of times when I was using, but I couldn't make any progress because the drugs were like a barrier between me and my emotions. Even my own history, I didn't fully understand when I was using. And so I knew I had to address the trauma. And it's why like 30% of my book is recovery. And part of that is the trauma substance use interplay. But the other reality is, like, I didn't know that I had PTSD. I didn't know you could have PTSD if you weren't a war vet. But when I went into therapy after I got out of rehab, she correctly diagnosed me with PTSD. And for me, it showed up as severe anxiety. And so it took me a lot longer to get my mental health under good control than it did my substance use. Like my substance use disorder, I'd say within 2.5 years, I never really struggled with it after that. I mean, I haven't forgotten the misery.
Yeah, you don't forget.
I don't play around the edges, as we could talk about. But I was in therapy, first individual and then group, and on meds for a while, for 9 years, because the trauma and the anxiety, they came first. They were older and they were more complicated. But I did understand when I got sober that if I didn't address my trauma, what I would have called at the time my abuse history, I wasn't, even if I could stay sober, I wasn't going to be happy. Like I wasn't going to be able to live a happy life. And so that was definitely a high priority on my list. And you're right. A very high percentage of people that get sober have other mental health conditions to address as well. And I say other because addiction, substance use disorder is a mental health condition. But I think it's like, I see different data, 55 to 75% of us have something else we have to address too. And it's better to do it simultaneously. You're going to have better odds of success. But as I said, it's just to be happy, to really be productive. I mean, it took me a long time to be able to sort of absorb my accomplishments, to be able to relax somewhat into my life, to be able to trust not that bad things wouldn't happen, but that if they did, I could handle them. Not necessarily, not that there wouldn't be pain or stress or adjustments, but that I could handle them. Because that's really what you need to know in order to be able to deal with your life. Things will happen. I mean, the sober is good because you're not making things worse. Okay? Like when I was using, I was making new problems or making unavoidable problems worse. That stops with sobriety. But to really be able to enjoy life, I had to get my trauma under control.
And you manage with this during this drug addiction. That's quite incredible. Go to college and excel in a way enough to get through it. And I heard on the podcast that you were doing more than normal people, but still doing way less than you were doing in that in that full 20 years that you were doing. What put you like in like, let's go, let's study? Is it like leaving the home and going to California away from all this?
That was part of it, because when I left New Jersey and came to California, actually I didn't look for meth, and it didn't come to my attention for a few years, and that helped. So I was doing other drugs, and definitely doing them in excess and chaos, but it was better. It was an improvement. But really, part of it was that I didn't get my mental health under control, and I had that rape, and I moved in with a violent boyfriend. And so I was really not making the decisions that were going to set me up for long-term success. Right. And so I lost the little grip that I had. But even in those 3.5 years, it wasn't great. It was just, for me.
Just enough. It
was better. For me, it was better. But I started using meth again regularly in January of my senior year of college. And then I used for 10 more years. And so I wasn't able to maintain it.
What I realized, you probably never heard this one before. I worked in the chicken shop in my life. And when a rooster had a broken leg, well, you had to take him out right away, kill him, and take him out the farm. And when a chicken's leg was broken, you didn't touch it at all. And there's a huge reason for this, because let's say the rooster is injured. Well, if he's sick or something, well, a rooster that's weak, well, other roosters are gonna destroy him. So let's say he's sick, it's gonna infect the whole thing. But with a chicken, they won't kill her. They're just gonna abuse her to the highest degree. So the chicken that has a broken leg is gonna give more eggs than any other chicken in the whole place, because they're gonna take advantage of a weak, fragile, that can't run away. So and I realized that men do this as well. You go in a bar and a girl that has trouble standing up, well, you're gonna see 3-4 fucking sharks around her, trying to bring her back to his place. It's like if they're, because guys like to have control, I guess, and take over in life. That's like in our mindset a bit. But it's literally when we see a girl that's fragile, naive, a lot of guys prey on these people. And I think it, because you were talking like it's the in a way the victim that keeps going to these men. But I'm telling you, maybe you're right, but as well, the men are looking for these girls that are hurt, that are runaways, that are looking for guidance, and that they can just easy manipulate. Because there's a lot of guys that are looking for a great girl, but these men are really looking to girls with trauma, girls that are hurt, girls that maybe don't know what is right or wrong in life.
That's interesting. I'm sure you're right about that. I'm sure you're right about that. And then on the violence side, I mean, part of the reason that women with violence histories pick violent men is partially just like the familiarity, right? I mean, I moved in with a boyfriend that I already knew was violent. And part of it was that there was, first of all, he was an abused child himself, so which is common for the abuser to also have an abuse history. So there was sort of that trauma bond, right? We understood each other in a way. We recognized each other's pain in a way. But also he wasn't as violent as I grew up with. So to me, it didn't seem that bad, like it was, less frequent than in my house. And, but it was, eventually it was a high stress and a high risk environment, but there's just that familiarity to it. You understand it. It doesn't seem as outrageous to me as it would to someone who didn't grow up like that. And so it can all play. And that's why the patterns can repeat. And you're right. That's why we need to deal with what's underneath. It's just like with some people ask me about that theory that, if you substitute one addiction for another, you get sober, but you're going to start gambling or overspending. And to me, the answer to that is also deal with what's underneath, what's causing you, what was the impetus for the substance use? Because if you don't deal with what's underneath, you will be much more likely to pick up some other problematic behavior, even if you stay sober.
Absolutely. When I stopped Freebase, it was 33 days of pure nightmare because it was cold turkey, no 12-step program, no nothing. And it was a nightmare. But what I realized each time I had the rage every night, I was just doing speed. Might as well give myself a high. And when I'm on adrenaline this high, because it pumps you up to the highest degree, well, the rage of the other one would not be there. Like in my head, it would even work to want that other drug because now I'm just inside me. So I push myself doing like that the whole time. And 33 days later, I wake up and I'm fucking sober, no rage at all, nothing. And I was crying. Reality hit me right there, realizing everything I did in those 2 years that were like gone. I was in debt. My teeth were fucked up. Didn't see my kids in 2 years. And the people I manipulated, lied to, and friends I lost, it all hit me at once there. But I needed something to help me go through it. And I never was addicted to speed in my life. So when I wanted to stop it, it just stopped. But what I realized after that, wow, like you said, we lose something in us for fucking ever, like the dopamine. We really need to recreate all that. And for me, I was like, well, I don't have energy. I always had a flame in me. I was an athlete all my life, and now I was just didn't even want to think about going to work. Couldn't even get up. I was like, what the hell? Where's this flame? Where is it? It was gone. And so I replaced that with another drug that was energy drinks. So I'm still on energy drinks today, way less than I was before, but it affects us so much. And a lot of people don't understand that you can do drugs once, 1,000 times, and it takes that one time there that maybe you're never going to get back that person that you were before.
Well, I mean, I'll say this, your brain does recover over time. It's just a lot slower than we like, right? I mean,
Okay.
I've seen brain scans of like people on meth that, using at 30 days sober, 6 months, a year, 2 years, even at 2 years sober, your brain isn't fully back to normal, but it's much, much closer. And so the good news is that with time, your brain recovers. And the other thing is we talk a lot about how addiction is like rewires the brain. But the truth is sobriety rewires the brain too, right? When you're making new positive choices and you make those positive choices over and over, you are also rewiring your brain. So that same mechanism can be to your advantage in your recovery process. But it's a lot slower than people think it is and or want. And it's also why most of us aren't perfectly abstinent from day one. And I wasn't either. I used 3 times in my first 5 months. Although I do like to emphasize that if I could have used 3 times in 5 months on a regular basis, I wouldn't have been in rehab. Okay, that was way better. Mm-hmm. But part of why it's harder to stay sober, if that's what you're trying for in the early days, is that you just don't have sort of the practice of it, the good habit of it, the experience of saying no or not putting yourself in that situation, or knowing that you can deal with your emotions by going to your therapy next week or whatever it might be. It's a process, and it does take longer. And a lot of people do substitution. I mean, in rehab, the common substitutions are sugar and caffeine, right? And cigarettes. And so in my rehab, we used all of those. And so there's, a substitution period isn't necessarily a bad thing, as long as eventually you work your way into a healthy behavior. I mean, less harmful is better than more harmful, right? So.
Absolutely. And what do you feel about this phrase? I'm going to say a phrase and tell me what you think about this. If you're not ready to stop, well, the person's never going to stop. What do you think about that phrase? I hate it.
I mean, it isn't true. First of all, I mean, I didn't get sober for 32, right? And there, believe me, at 31, there wasn't any indication I was ever going to get sober. There really wasn't. Things were still getting worse. But also, this old idea that you have to have some kind of horrible bottom in order to get sober, it's not true. I mean, a lot of people do address their substance use problems when they develop so addiction, which today, as you know, we call substance use disorder. Today, it's viewed on a spectrum, mild, moderate, or severe. Just like all mental health conditions, you can have mild, moderate, or severe anxiety, mild, moderate, or severe depression, right? So today, one of the emphases is let's disrupt that problem at the mild or moderate level and not wait until the very severe level, because you're better off. You don't lose as many years and you don't destroy as much of your life, and you don't put yourself at further health risk. Now, when I take that test, the diagnostic DSM test on addiction, I ended up at the very severe level, because it was a long time and at a high level, and I got sober. It's not that you can't, but the truth is that we should focus on encouraging people to do it earlier and not wait for some horrible bottom. And the truth is I have 30 years of sobriety, and I can't look at a newcomer and say what their path is going to be, or if they're going to be successful or not, or if they'll have 4 slips and then they'll get it. I mean, nobody really knows that about somebody else. Even the doctors don't understand why sobriety is harder for some people than others. They don't fully understand that. Part of it, though, is what's underneath. Do you have untreated mental health or others? So it's definitely not true. And part of the reason I talk about I didn't get sober till 32 is to try to help people feel more reassured that, that's not, I mean, people get sober later than that, but still, at any point, you can stop it. I mean, anybody can stop it at any point, even if they might need us to help them find supports.
Absolutely. Because I hear a lot of people say that because of cigarettes, like, oh, if that person's not ready to stop, he's never going to stop. The fuck not, people. Every person that tried to help me there, the whole fucking last 8 months, I would be all nice until they got the fuck out my door. And when they did, I locked it and blocked them forever. The number, Facebook, everything. Why? Because you're trying to change me. When you're trying to help, you're a great person, but it wasn't good enough. And I wasn't going to tell myself, oh, Sam, we're going to stop. I knew I had a problem. There. But I wasn't going to do the steps. I wasn't. And that phrase would have brought me to my death if everybody would have waited for the guy that's a druggie to want to stop. And one of my friends got me, was like, I'm not giving you a choice. You're coming to my place, and literally forced my train to get derailed. And then I started thinking maybe in the positive, maybe we could, maybe. And then everything came to place little by little. But if it wouldn't be for that person to not take my no at all and came with a trailer, started moving my stuff without me asking, I would be dead right now for sure.
Well, the other thing I'll say to that is that most of us don't go into sobriety 100% committed to abstinence or 100% sure that we can stop drugs, right? And usually there's ambivalence, especially in the beginning. I mean, I didn't believe I could get sober. It's not that I wanted to
that was a
illegal.
fancy word. What was that?
Ambivalence?
Yeah.
Yeah. People are ambivalent, right? I mean, one day you might think, yeah, I'm going to do this or I can. Another day it's like, oh no, I'm sure I can drink. I'm just going to take a break, whatever, right? You go back and forth in the beginning. Most of us go back and forth. And I think, if we're setting up a bar for getting sober of, you have to be 100% sure 100% of the time. Well, most people can't pass that test, right? I mean, it just doesn't happen. It's usually a process. And so for me, my life was so destroyed. I mean, by 32, I couldn't hold a job. I was feeling in despair, hopeless, trapped. My partner was ready to throw me out. It was like everything together made me think, well, maybe I ought to try rehab. But I didn't think sober was on the table. I was trying to figure out how to use less. And it's not that I wanted to keep using. I just didn't think it was possible for me to get sober. And so, but with being exposed to other people who had done it, then gradually I started to think, okay, well, then maybe I can do it too. Maybe it's worth the effort. I'm going to try. But that is usually a common process. And part of the reason I emphasize that is friends and family, I think, can get really freaked out if there's ever any statement that doesn't show 100% commitment to 100% abstinence from day one. And that's just not a fair expectation, and it's not realistic. I mean, again, I used 3 times in 5 months, and now I've got 30 years, and so we all have our process. Sometimes it takes people a year or two to put together 6 months. I mean, it just depends on a lot of factors. But the main thing is, are people still trying? If you got somebody that's struggling with recovery, I mean, to me, the focus is, are they still making efforts? Is there anything we can add to help them more? Like you mentioned 12 steps. Well, 12 steps help some people, but it's not the right fit for everybody. And there are other options. Like I'm on the board for Life Ring Secular Recovery, and she recovers. Sometimes part of help is saying, hey, you're saying 12, you don't like 12 steps that much. Did you know that there were other options? And maybe you should look at those. Or, they're struggling. Maybe you can offer to pay for therapy or whatever it might be. But it's normal. Some people have perfect abstinence from day one, but it's not the norm. It's definitely by far the minority group that does that.
Yeah, and everybody is different. So our ways to cope in and our ways to maybe get out is sometimes different. I heard that when you went to the 12-step program initially, they wanted you to be sober for 72 hours before. It's like, people, I didn't get your resources yet. Where are you guys? Like, come to my home for 3 days. Maybe we'll figure it out before we get there. It's like they're trying to stop people to get in there.
Yeah, that was my rehab. It's supposed to be sober. Look, I was sober for 24 hours, and I thought that was really good.
It is.
I mean, part of it was they didn't want the detox, the detox problem, but then you got to send me to detox, right? I mean, like maybe go to detox, but yeah, at my house, I'm going to be sober for 72 hours. No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
I realize that some problems that people have is because they want to stop and everything, but they're in the same circle of people around the same town. It's like, you gotta run away from there, and not literally run away, but you are your 5 best friends. So you are the people that you surround yourself with on a daily. At some point, I was zero criminal, and I was hanging around with 5 people that were. I was starting to tell myself at a certain point, probably go do a crime with them at some point. And I was like, what the fuck is going through my head? And I literally moved away from these guys. I was like, man, this is not good. And let's say you hang around with 5 people in the suits and you're on welfare. I'm telling you, at a certain point, you're going to want to put that suit and to fucking achieve. It all creates, the environment you put yourself in. And a lot of people shy away from saying that. It's not only the drug you stop. It's not only the trauma. It's the surrounding that you are in.
That's true. I mean, that is one of the advantages of peer support groups, is that you can build a community of friends and support and people that want to do sober activities, and you can be with them. And, you are correct too. Relationships have to be evaluated when you in the beginning. Now, some relationships, well, first of all, some relationships when you get sober, you realize there's actually not any connection with this person except we had fun using together, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Only them. But some of the like one of my closest friends continued to use after I did, and what basically what I needed to not see her in person, in the beginning
for time, yeah.
I could talk to her on the phone, but I could, and it wasn't that she was going to try to encourage me to use. She supported my sobriety. It was just being around somebody who was high who could be triggering. And so there are some people that you just let go of because they're not. It turns out they're not important. There are some people that you have to you can have to put them in a certain box for now, but later you might be able to do more with them. And then there are some people that you can have around the whole time. But even sober people aren't always supportive of your sobriety or your process. I mean, like my mother, I didn't have a good relationship with her. I wasn't going to tell her I was trying, to get sober and go into therapy because she wasn't going to offer me anything positive. I would just be critical, or, it's not just about, are they sober? It's about, are they going to be supportive and helpful to me? And if not, in the beginning, my bandwidth is limited. I can't deal with those people for now. You can make a decision later about whether you can reintroduce them in your life. But in the beginning, keep it to the people that are actually going to help you reach your goals.
I realize that most people can't be understanding of it because you never been through it.
Yes.
That's why I say in my song, they call it empathy, but they don't understand that this is a pain swallowing this land. Because at first you feel invisible, at the end you want to be invisible. The feeling was indescribable, but it's like these people don't understand. They're like, you should just do this and that. Bro, you're not going through the nightmares that I was for that 33 days that I'm telling myself I better not find my credit card because I would have cleared myself. I gave it to my ex. I was like, you better hide that shit on your wallet because I will rob myself any day. So I was looking through the cupboards every night, and thank God I didn't find it. But it was just me in my head every night. She would wake up in the morning, reclose all the cupboards, reclose every place I search for that money. Because a lot of people are not going to understand the demons and the thoughts and things you convince yourself that what you're going to do next to go re-get that drug. It's unimaginable.
That's true. And some people have very strong and yet uninformed opinions about what your recovery should look like, right? That you have to go inpatient when actually not everybody needs to go inpatient and not everybody can. Not everybody has access to it because there's not really a robust system of readily available, affordable treatment in the US. A lot of people don't have access, or they can't leave their job or whatever. But sometimes friends and family can be very adamant about what they think you need to do or how fast you need to do it. Like, why don't you have a full-time high pressure job yet? You've been sober for 30 days. It's like, that's not, a good plan sometimes. Right. And so it's important that the people that you keep in your life are keeping within their boundaries, that they're not trying to impose their beliefs or their opinions on you. And as you say, a lot of times it's people who haven't been through it and don't really understand. But even people who have gotten sober, sometimes they can be really adamant that their way is the one and only way.
Yeah, it's the best way.
And not only the best, the only. It's even
the
worse
only,
when they say the only, right? Because my way wasn't the way of my rehabs program wasn't a good fit for me. And then when I got home, I ended up finding other approaches and I built an individual plan. But people, look, I think it's valuable for us to share how we did it as information. Like, I'm going to tell you how I did it so that you can think about, are any of these techniques going to help you? But it's like for your consideration. It's not like an order that you copy me. It's like here, the more ideas that you hear, the more different approaches that you learn about, the better the odds you're going to find techniques that actually will help you, right? It's got to be a filtering. Like 12 steps wasn't right for me, but I read the AA Big Book and I read the NA text, and I was looking for, are there any parts of it that I can use? And so, when I hear people's stories, is there some sort of strategy that person used that might be useful to me? It's got to be, it's good to hear it and absorb it and listen, like be open in listening, but then you can make a decision. Is this going to help me as an individual?
because there's some give and take in everything, like the 12-step program. Okay, maybe there's just 4 steps in here that are very good for you, because I realize that a lot of the 12-step program, they try to push God. A lot of people are not believer in God, and right when you're gonna mention that, they're gonna be like, what the fuck am I doing here? He's trying to push Jesus on me, and they're just gonna run away. Every person is different, and we can't just have the same formula to all of them like they do in schools. Most children are having trouble in schools. It's because they all force us to do the work the same way. There's some people that are visual in life. There's some people are more logic, but they're all jamming us. And this is the one that remembers the best is the smartest. That's how it is, actually. So there's always different techniques. What made you transition after the addiction recovery and being like, might as well be a judge and start deciding the laws on you people?
Well, so look, my last 10 years after college, and I did well in college. I graduated from Berkeley, which is, a pretty top tier school.
Yeah.
But those 10 years after college, when I was using meth again, my term is I worked my way down the corporate ladder. Okay. Like I couldn't hold a job. Right. And because I was using all the time. So when I got sober, I had a Berkeley degree, good grades, and an embarrassing resume. Embarrassing. And so my first career goal when I got home from rehab was, let's not get fired again. Like that was my career goal. Okay. And so, nobody was going to hire me for a career job, but I wasn't ready for a career job. And so I didn't want to do it. Believe me, I didn't want to do it, but I had to admit, like, sort of what could I handle? And so my first job was a part-time, temporary, low-level administrative job. And then my second job was a permanent full-time mid-level administrative job. And then I got a supervisory job at a larger company where I got a promotion. And then at 6.5 years sober, I went to Berkeley Law School. So not right away, 6.5 years. I was 39. I was, also sort of a midlife career change. And I worked at a big law firm, and then I did class action work for the federal government. And then at 20 years sober, I was appointed a federal administrative law judge. So no, I did not get sober thinking one day I'll be a judge. I thought, let's not get fired again. And look, and to me, it's a good example of that sort of incremental progress in sobriety, right? It's, to me, when we start thinking, don't think about your 5-year plan when you just get sober. First of all, you don't know who you're going to be in 5 years or even 2 years, right? You're going to change a lot. But also, I think it's much more productive, more useful to think, what's my first goal in these different areas? Like, what's my first job goal? Once you get your first job, well, then what's the job I want next? How do I prepare myself for that next job? How do I get ready? And it's amazing if you do that, how far you can go in 3 years or 5 years, or especially 20 years, so.
Because 5 years sometimes feel like a mountain. It's so far away and stuff. So you gotta give yourself those little hills, little by little, and it gives you gratification of achieving that. And it seems like possible compared to that Everest of, like, in 5 years, where am I gonna be? Oh my God! Yes. No, do this little hill and go to the other one and move on little by little.
Well, it builds up your competence, right? Because you're getting practice at setting goals, building a plan, implementing the plan. You're getting experiences that will move forward. And so it's not like you're sort of doing nothing. It's an important step, and it's an important practice. The reality is that early recovery, a lot of it is about building skills in all different areas of your life. I really lost the connection to me as a good student. Like, I was afraid to look at my college resume because I thought maybe my transcript, because I thought maybe I didn't do as well as I remembered. It felt so long ago. 10 years later at 32, like I was disconnected from that part of myself, and I had to rebuild that connection and, remember how to, set a deadline and be on time at work and, stay all the hours I was supposed to be there, not disappear in the middle of the day or whatever I used to do. So those are skills. It takes practice for us to build up again.
What challenges did you face while studying law and starting your career? Did your past experiences influence your role as a judge, do you think?
So when I went to law school, I was actually, in some ways, it was easier for me because I was an older student, and my husband and I were still together. So I had a stable home life, and I had been working, regularly building up skills for 6.5 years. A lot of the younger law students, they're coming right from college. So they have an advantage because they're like in the mode of studying, which I had, lost, but they're also dealing with new relationships, and, they're just sort of in a more emotionally volatile time of life. When I was a judge, I didn't do criminal law cases, but I did have to do cases with people who had substance use problems. And there was, really specific law that I had to apply. But today I actually, lawyers and judges usually have continuing legal education requirements. And I created a CLE about substance use where I train lawyers and judges. And one of the things I talk to them about is where the legal system goes wrong, in my opinion, in regard to drug use. Like even where drug.
Oh, I was a criminal before, and if we move this here, wow.
Well, it's mostly that, like, I mean, for example, let's just take drug courts. There's a real wide variety of quality. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think using drugs should be a crime at all. Anyway, I think it's an ineffective approach. It's not
absolutely.
Obviously isn't. It hasn't reduced our drug use rate. It hasn't reduced any of that, right? And it's expensive. We could treat people. We could treat 3 or 4 people for every one we incarcerate, and we don't have enough treatment as it is, right? So the money should be better spent. But also, a lot of drug courts have, they don't fully really understand what they're doing. Like they push people into care that's not evidence-based, or they set rules like perfect abstinence or you're going to jail when most people can't do perfect abstinence.
Wow.
Right?
That's like a trap that for sure you're falling in.
Exactly. Or they mandate 12 steps instead of saying go to peer support and letting the person pick the right peer support group.
Wow, yeah.
Now, first of all, it's illegal to mandate 12 steps because it has a religious aspect. But even if what I really emphasize for them isn't that, is that if their goal is to give the person the best odds of success, then you need to let them choose what peer support group fits them best, because they're going to have a better chance of succeeding if they're in the right group than if you're forcing them into a group that's not the right fit. So I have those kind of conversations with them.
Absolutely. That is incredible that you did that, really educating these people. It's like we said at the beginning, people don't understand unless you're there. And since you went through it and became a judge, because most people that do these kinds of drugs that are powerful like this for at least 20 years, you don't become a judge or a policeman or somebody in government spot there. So you were really somebody outside the box completely, and really giving these people knowledge of maybe the court is good, people, but maybe if we just work it a bit around here, it would fit way more everybody. I find that is beautiful what you did right there.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, look, I use the judge title now as really an ear opener, right? I mean, I mean, look, I'm proud of it. It was an accomplishment, particularly with my history. But the reality is that becoming a judge isn't the best part or most important part of my recovery. It was my job, right? I mean, the joy of recovery is the lack of chaos, the lack of misery, the lack of obsession, being a good wife and a good aunt, and, all those other things. But that judge title does get people to listen a little bit harder, I think. And so I can share the information I think is important. So I really use the judge title as a tool at this point.
Well, rappers do the same. There's some rappers that were like, I was poor to the highest degree, like Eminem. He was at a trailer park, and at the end, he's a multimillionaire. Well, that inspires people when they see the lowest of the lowest to the highest of the highest, and that is very incredible. So, what inspired you to write your memoir, From Junkie to Judge? Woman's triumph over trauma and addiction. That's it. That's how you say it.
Yes, that's it. Okay. So when I was appointed a judge, it was sort of like a natural reflection time. Like, how did I do this? Go from
how did I get here?
How did I do this? And so I started reading memoir, which I hadn't read much of, and I noticed a couple of things. One is that most drug memoirs they start right away with the chaos of the addiction. They don't show where it came from.
Exactly.
And I really wanted to show where it came from. Why did it make sense to me at 12 and 16 years old to start using at a heavy level and to start shooting meth? And then I have, the usual chaos of addiction stories, but 30% of my book at the end is recovery. And that's actually a high percentage for memoir, because a lot of memoirs at the end, it's like, I went to a couple meetings and everything was great. And it's like, well, that's not how recovery works. So I do my first 3 years of my recovery, including my trauma, the interplay of the trauma recovery and the substance recovery. And it's not that I don't use some 12-step techniques, but I did an individual secular plan. And so I wasn't seeing any memoirs that were anything other than 12 steps. Now, don't get me wrong. The techniques I use, 12-step people can use them too, but I wanted example out there that wasn't 12-step based. And so that's sort of what I was thinking about. I didn't want to do a book that there were 22 other versions out there. I wanted to do a book that I felt wasn't already in the space. And that's how I thought about it.
And the title, you've been told that like multiple times. It's like saying to a hot girl, "You're beautiful." There, it's your sister. But the title name is incredible. There, the shock factor in that, it like really lights that light up. Like, what am I seeing? The guy doesn't even read books, but he's gonna check out and turn that book for sure if he sees it in the store. It's really captivating for sure. Can you talk about the involvement in and what these are? She Recovers Foundation and the Life Ring secular recovery. Explain what is that and what's your involvement in that?
Yeah, so I'm on the board for Life Ring Secular Recovery. I'm on the board since 2017, I think. And when I got sober, one of the groups that I used was their parent organization, which was SOS. And so Life Ring's philosophy, we call it the 3S philosophy. It's sobriety, although for Life Ring, sobriety includes medication-assisted treatment for substance use disorder. Any medication that's prescribed, medically indicated, prescribed, and I emphasize taken as prescribed, okay? Yeah. That counts as sober for us. So if people are on MAT, then that counts as sobriety as long as they take as prescribed. And then it's just no religion in meetings, but a lot of our members have personal religious or spiritual beliefs. Sure. It's just not a necessary part of our recovery, philosophy. But it's really focused on the individual nature of the plan. So it's called the personal recovery plan. And the idea is that what works for you and what works for me may be different, and that's okay. And so the group is there to sort of share ideas. We actually talk to each other in meetings. There's crosstalk, we call it. So it's to try to support each other in finding the right path for them. And we have a workbook that can help people do like an analysis to build an individual plan. And then She Recovers Foundation, I'm on the board for them. And She Recovers isn't just substance recovery. It's also trauma recovery, mental health recovery, eating, gambling, overwork. It's sort of everything together, because as we talked about, most people, including most of the women that get sober, have other issues going on they need to address as well. And so in She Recovers, you can talk about the interplay. Like somebody might say, I'm really doing well with my alcohol, but now my food issues are picking up, or whatever. You can talk about that dynamic. She Recovers also isn't necessarily abstinence-based. She Recovers members get to define what they mean by recovery. And so some members may give up everything but continue to use cannabis. Well, if that works for them, that's their choice, So we don't define recovery goals in She Recovers.
Wow. But She Recovers is for girls, so I get it with the title there.
Yeah, it's women, including trans women or gender neutral, who feel comfortable in women's communities, and so yes, it is. And then, but Life Ring, of course, is for everybody.
Do you find it's important for some recovery programs to separate the men and women? I find that it is, because a man's not going to live the same life as a girl at all. And there's literally perception in the guy's mind of girls and perception of the inverse that nobody's ever going to understand. So starting to put these two people in the same kinds of groups, well, people are going to be shocked and people are going to judge and by putting the same sex, I think it's a better way to do it than mixing it all up. I think having precise and different, because we all live through this different stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's not always a hard line about what women go through versus men. There's overlap, but you're right. I mean, also some women have assault histories by men, and they may not be comfortable sharing in front of men. And so, I mean, even 12 steps, there are women's meetings, and Life Ring has women's meetings and men's meetings. And so there are some topics that people feel more comfortable talking about with a same-sex group, and particularly things like sexual assault. But some women are they just feel more open if it's a women's only community. But also, I mean, like She Recovers, it's really focused on building the women up, the goal is the journey to wholeness is the way it's talked about. And so it's Life Ring too. It's more self-empowerment focused, not about, being powerless or, turning your will in your life over, but rather on building up your skills, your confidence, your competency, reintegrating with your whole self is sort of the goal.
Instead of the isolation that we were doing initially in the drug there. Is there a particular memory or incident from your time using that still haunts you today?
I mean, I remember some of the worst, like I still have scars, I still have track marks and abscess scars, right? And I mean, in a way, the good thing for me was I always had bad veins, so I don't have like a long line. I have like scar here, So in a way, it's more hidden. But I definitely still have scars, and I had a lot of times where I was having a lot of abscesses. My body was just depleted, right? And so I'd get infections and all of those things. But also I used to have a lot of problems hitting the veins because I always had baby veins. And so like I was going to my legs and just all kinds of chaos. Even when I get blood taken, like 3 times ago, I think I was doing an MRI or a CT, and they had to give you that dye, and they couldn't get it in my veins. They had to put it in my friggin' ankle. Like it's still a problem today.
I would have been like, give it to me. I got it.
I tried that and they won't let you.
I know.
They don't let you.
I know. My mom's a nurse, and they wouldn't let her when they couldn't do it.
I mean, I've got 30 years sober, but I'm confident I could hit a vein on at least the second try.
I'm quite sure. I'm quite sure. Me, there a memory that still gonna haunt me today because I did a podcast about my song and really talking about it, and just by rethinking about what really hurts me still from that time, it's not rethinking about myself almost dying, and it's not that. It's what I tell people, if you ever seen the movie The Mask with Jim Carrey, well, I feel that cocaine is exactly that. Let's say you're somebody that's very generous and sweet. Well, I'm giving you cocaine. You're going to be that, but amplified to the highest degree. If you're a piece of shit and I give you cocaine, well, it's going to be that, but oh my God, to the extreme. That's what happens in The Mask. When the bad person puts it, he's completely different character. To him, he's a lovable guy, and he's really lovable with the arrows and stuff. So I'm a generous person in life. I care about people, and I'm a nice person. So because of that, when you think that's good qualities when you're on cocaine, the fuck not. Because what you don't realize, by getting addicted to any drug, you're signing a contract with a demon that you can't even face physically. And since you're generous because you're a good person, every person around me, I was giving it to them, not selling it. Why sell it? I could just give it, and if you want some one day, you're just gonna take it. But literally, I at least 80 to like 100 people that never took some in their life, I managed to put them on it. And after I became sober, after 2 years, this is what haunts me, is seeing those people still stuck to date. And at least 5 or 6 I know still again today are still on it. And I know it's all my fucking fault. And for sure, it's their choice right now to get off or not. But we got to be realistic in life. I put them in this situation, and that will haunt me forever. And it hurts me to the bottom of my heart because I lost friends. I was in debt, even lost all my teeth back then. Everything was going bad. But the thing that hurt me the most is seeing those same people that I cared about in this drug again today. Because that's what we do. Because often drugs are social too. That's why you're going to want maybe sometimes to do it with somebody without knowing, like, hey, I'm stuck in there for 5 years. Why am I giving it to somebody that never took it? Maybe he's going to be stuck. But we don't think about that because we can't even realize all this. And that's what haunts me forever in that drug.
I mean, I can understand that. I mean, I used drugs with my sister who was 2 years younger. And although I will say, when I wrote the book, I thought I shot her up the first time. Like, she begged me. And it turned out, she told me recently, actually, it wasn't the first time. She just told me that. But you're right. There is that regret about things that we've done. On the other hand, the truth is that most people that use drugs in moderation, right? The reason those friends of yours developed a problem is really probably because they were primed for it from something else going on, and probably would have been exposed anyway. I mean, I don't want to, we have to take some personal responsibility for our own bad choices. I wish I would have done things, right? I wish I would have done them. But but I would hesitate to put, their whole trajectory from that point forward on your shoulders. But we didn't mean any harm. To us, it was normal behavior, right? And so we didn't have that sort of heightened sense of don't do this. I mean, like I said, I was in sort of the early meth wave. We really, in my day, heroin was the drug you weren't supposed to do. Like heroin was the problem drug, right?
Yeah.
We underappreciated the risk of meth. And so we started seeing people fall by the wayside, of which I was one of the early ones to fall.
If you could give back, look back and give your younger self one piece of advice during these dark times, what would it be? So it could maybe give advice to somebody in that dark time right now. Listen to this.
I think that would have helped me would have been getting mental health treatment when I was young, right? When I think about today, I mean, even today, it's hard. There's not enough treatment programs for teens, not just substance programs, but mental health in general. Because sometimes people ask me, what's the number one thing we could do to reduce the U.S. addiction rate, which is like one of the highest in the world? And my answer to that is mental health treatment for kids. And I do feel like if I would have known to even ask or try to pursue or find a way for me to get proper professional help when I was younger, I may have either avoided it completely or at least, made it shorter, had a not as lengthy of a problem. And so, but there wasn't we didn't have therapists in my school. There wasn't anything like that. And I didn't know anybody who went into anything like that. It wasn't on my radar. But if I would have gotten early intervention, that could have really changed the course of my life.
I think me as well, because I felt always different. I felt like I was in a prison of my mind, but it's because I had OCD, but I didn't know. So literally, I feel like nobody understands me. I'm like, fuck it. And I live behind truth that most people live behind lies and a mask or an impression of who they are. So for me, most people I can't get along with and never understand it. And if I would have went to see experts to really dial down what the fuck do I have, and I would have understood it way more. And my OCD makes me procrastinate. Sometimes I don't open my mail for 5 months, and that sent me to jail for 46 hours. I never went to jail in my life, and especially when I was doing bad shit, never in that time. This is literally 4 years ago. I didn't open my mail, and I should have told my probation officer, and I'm on probation because police brutality on me. But since I put my hand on that officer to rip his badge off, I would be incriminated in Canada. So I just called it off there. But so that's why I was on probation. Didn't give my address because I didn't think about that shit, and I don't open my mail. Get sent to jail, and then they transfer me in a prison for a 46-hour. And what I realized, because I analyze people to the highest degree, I have fun, just body language, understanding people and everything. Right when I get in there, they put me in a huge ass cell of 40 feet, and they put one guy in it. And after 5 minutes, he starts peeing in the corner of and I could not believe it, the smell, because it's locked in. And when the police opens the door to ask me to come out to go get searched and all that, and he's like, oh, what's that smell? I'm like, he pissed. And that guy was talking the whole time to himself there, and I was like, oh my god, what the fuck is this guy doing here? This guy needs completely medical help. And he told me that it's been the third time in the past 2 years that he was coming in for DUI. And I was like, the guy is lost there in his mind. And so those 46 hours, I saw a lot of them without talking to them because it was COVID time. So we were all locked in, but I still saw these people. They were walking everywhere, not me. And all of them, I was realizing when I left that place that at least 55 to 65% of them needed medical help, not being in prison. I'm not saying take off the crime, but fucking give them a good analyze, because these people need medical. Most of them, they were all lost, and I felt like it looked like a prison of handicaps that they put here. Poor people, you lock them up, and I'm a good person, and just that 46 hours, I was praying to God that night and telling myself I cannot be in here for a week. My mind there would have been fucked, and I felt it. I felt like a kid that was taken off my freedom of life and put in a cage. So it's so true that most people need medical there to a high degree, or else you're going to put yourself And
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, it also goes to the fact that incarceration is another trauma on top of what else has already happened to them, right? I mean, maybe not, they're in there overnight or something, but incarceration's traumatic. And I mean, I know in the US in particular, we don't have proper mental health treatment system. We don't have a proper substance use system. And so a lot of people end up in jails or prisons, and they're not set up for it. And it's also, again, a very expensive option. It's so much cheaper to address things medically. And people get stuck, and it's just this, this cycle, and they loop through and they loop through. And it's just not effective. It's just not effective.
And most guys don't go seek help. I saw a thing online of stats that showed that guys know more inside themselves that they have a mental problem than girls, but they're the ones least to go get it. So girls, they think they have it less, but most girls go check it out at a certain point in their life. Isn't that crazy? Because guys, the stigma of you can't cry, you can't be a bitch. Well, that's what made me start writing music when I was 13. I was going through a lot of shit, and I was emptying myself on paper. That felt fucking great. I needed to find something because I wasn't going to tell my friends. I wasn't going to tell people at school because I saw right when you showed weakness there, that guy was, didn't have a nice parents, and he was crying about it at school. He would get eaten up by all the sharks around him. People that would never fight in their life were getting pushed to the highest degree for them to start a fight and get beat. It was stupid. I couldn't even believe what people would do to the people that were different or considered weak to the eyes of a bully. It's sickening, and that's what men do to get those girls, like we were saying earlier, is they see a weakness and they're going to attack on it and prey on it. It's unimaginable. How can friends and family assist somebody right now in drugs and try to do something?
Yeah. So that old tough love idea is really not evidence-based. So the current evidence-based approach for friends and family is called CRAFT. It's community reinforcement and family training. And there's a really good book for friends and family called Beyond Addiction.
I'll put it on the screen.
Yeah, Beyond Addiction, and it's on Amazon and all the other sites. Basically, Beyond Addiction, it explains what is sub-addiction, also why is it so hard to change, sort of what's going on in the brain and the other habit processes. And then it gives friends and family really practical advice about positive reinforcement techniques they can use to try to move their friend or family member in the right direction. But it's also really clear about sort of where friends and family, where the line is about what they even should be doing, but also what they can do. I mean, so it has techniques like having an honest conversation with the person struggling about like, what are the substances doing for you? Like what need is being met? And let's see if we can get that need met in a different way instead of just pretending like this is, just stop, it doesn't work. Right. But it's got a lot of really practical tips. And so I always recommend Beyond Addiction to friends and family. The other thing is the data shows that if people have loving, supportive connections when they're trying to get sober, they do better. The odds are higher of success. But none of this means friends and family have to let themselves be financially abused or verbally. I mean, they can set boundaries, but there's an appropriate, healthy way to do that while still maintaining that loving connection and maybe even with positive reinforcement, moving the person in a good direction.
That I think is a great way to go because, like I said earlier, a lot of people say that phrase, "Oh, that person's not ready," bro. Most of the time, the person's not gonna be like, "Okay, mom, you said it for 15 years. Okay, let's do something about it. I really want to stop." No, that's never gonna happen, people. So, it's not cigarettes. This is not cigarettes. So this is not weed. This is literally some things that are so strong, it's unimaginable. That's why I say in the chorus in my song, I'm like lost in a puzzle with no exit. Freebase story. Feeding for another hit. God, please help me. Ghost train, titanium chains, flashing lights, hell on earth. I was trapped in the endless nights, eyes bloodshot, mind distort reality, but actually, I cannot escape this powerful tragedy. Manually, help me. And the first time I wrote that chorus, I didn't put that help me, and I was like, after you say that powerful tragedy manually, I'm like, people I don't know, maybe they're not gonna get it. Like, I put help me. Like, fuck it. You get it now because you gotta go derail that train. And why I call it a ghost train, these rages, is because you can't fight it. Like physically, so you're getting pulled in a direction right now that you don't want. This rage of what am I gonna do for that next puff or next hit? And those titanium chains are some of the most solid chains in the world. So literally, you need to go help that person. Give them a support system, just like you said. If I think my family would have showed up during those times, and they would have been like, "We love you." But we can't just let you die. So this is our way to, I think that would have done something. But I didn't get a message of fucking nobody. And because people saw me so fucked up, I could barely go to a restaurant and eat, look normal by everybody, because I just wanted that hit. And I'm not even hungry. I don't even want food. I just wanted that high. So.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. It's something that, like for example, friends and family, it may be helpful for them to do some research and offer options. Like, if you think you need inpatient treatment, here's a couple places. Do any of those appeal to you? Or here's an outpatient program. So it's not that they can't be useful. It's when they mandate, like, you must go here now. Like that. Problem arises. But a lot of times when we're trapped in the chaos of our addiction, we don't have sort of the brain energy to figure the shit out, right? I mean, so it can be helpful for them to say, hey, I found these 3 options for you. Do any of them interest you? Or would you like me to leave it here so you can take a look? Or you need to leave the decision making in my hands, but you can still be a part of the helpful process, in deciding what the right next step is.
And another thing that we can talk about to finish with there that I find is incredible that a lot of people can resonate with, that has nothing to do with drugs there. It's literally a lot of people in life there have trouble finding their fucking passions, are finding what's my fucking direction in this life? What's my career? What's the thing that's going to light me up? And they always think, oh, I'm 28. Like, it's too late. I'm 35. It's too late. Like, you're the exact great example of it's never fucking too late. And even if you got nothing on your fucking resume to the highest degree and nothing good, actually. So what can you tell these people? So maybe they find inspiration, because just your story is very inspiring, and I feel very fortunate to have you here. So let's get this beautiful information out of you.
Well, I will emphasize that I went to law school when I was 39 years old, right? It wasn't all.
Wow.
But also, and I became a judge. I forget how old I was, 53 or something.
Wow.
But also, I took early retirement in 2020, and what I've done now is sort of build a part-time service life for me. So I wrote a book. My book was published when I was 61 years old. 61 when my book was published. I started my speaking and writing career. Like, I've had pieces in the Wall Street Journal and others, which are on my website, by the way, junkie2judge.com.
Perfect.
But my writing and my speaking and my training, I do workshops, all that. I really started that like around 60. And so,
Wow.
there, it's never too late to figure out what's the right next step, or do I want to change what I'm doing and transition into something else? That's always an option. And for me, I like doing new things. I mean, when I started writing my book, for example, I was an excellent legal writer, but I read memoir and I was like, oh my God, this is written like a novel. Like, I don't know how to do that. Like, I had to go out and learn how to do it. I had to take classes and, do multiple revisions and be in critique groups. But I like that. That's like, brain stimulus, right? I'm
Absolutely.
doing something challenging, something new, something I don't know how to do. So it's always, for many of us, we want to progress in life. We want to tap into new parts of ourselves or stretch ourselves. And you can definitely do that at any point. I mean, I'm 63 now. I mean, I might as well admit my old age, but I've done a lot of new things in the last 5 years, and keeps me, interested in life. And also, it's rewarding. I feel like I've created a new sort of useful role for myself. And so,
do you find like it's a drug? That's what I find. I find it's a drug, like finding things that you're passionate about and everything. I've been writing music since I'm 13 years old, but releasing it was in my head like, am I really going to do this and get critiqued by everybody and get, but if you don't do it, you're never going to start. So I started releasing in January, and here we are 140,000 streams later. And my music been listened like 50 countries. And for me, I'm shocked because I would have thought maybe 1,000 a month in 7 months and I would have been happy. And literally releasing was like, oh my God, this procrastination for years. And then after I did that first one, I told my producer, I'm like, okay, I hope you're ready, because I think I want to release another 2 weeks later. And we've been doing that nonstop since that day. And it's literally never fucking too late, people. So thank you for coming. And where can everybody find you and get your book?
Sure. So just a reminder, the book is From Junkie to Judge, One Woman's Triumph Over Trauma and Addiction. It's on Amazon and all the usual sites. Your bookstore locally has it or can get it. My website is junkie2judge.com. And I'm also on Twitter at Mary Beth _. The other thing I'll emphasize is if, 6 months from now, you think, who was that? I don't forget. Look, just Google Junkie Judge and you can find me. Like, I am very Googleable at this point. And the other thing I'll say is I answer all messages. So you can message me through my website if you have other speaking opportunities or if you have questions for me, something I've talked about, feel free to reach out.
Okay. Thank you for coming on the podcast. So thank you, everybody, for coming on the Rumbling Facts podcast this week. And we'll see you guys Thursday. So take care.
Thank you.